Hey guys, welcome to PatternLab.London. I'm Ralph, and today it's season 1, episode 6, where we basically start to create beautiful, gorgeous, full-size repeat digital textile prints using the source imagery that we created in episode 5. So in this tutorial, it's a pretty technical one. We go really like full-on into the depths of kind of like print design. I'm going to be showing you how to obviously turn your source imagery into, let's say, a full repeat, and then obviously add like color layers, different filter effects, and obviously explain a little bit about printing and scaling, and obviously sending it off to digital textile printers like Spoonflower, for example. So it's a bit of a heavy one, but it's pretty much everything you need to know when it comes to creating your own gorgeous, beautiful digital textile prints. And we've got a whole bunch of resources on the actual video blog page as well. A few downloads for you, obviously the source imagery, we've got some of the repeats already, there's some of the finished prints, and also some of the templates as well. I also show you how to basically print these out full scale onto A4 multi-page PDFs in case you have a home printer and you don't have like a big digital printer. But yeah, so it should be quite a fun, interesting tutorial. See what you think. And then obviously once Francesca has chosen her print, we're then going to basically put these into our illustrations and like give her a better presentation of what her garment's actually going to look like, and then we're going to start obviously making that garment. I know it's been a little bit of time, but obviously I wanted to really explain the whole process of the whole print design side, the fashion illustration, the mood boarding, everything. So the next time we do a project, we're not going to cover this, we're just going to go straight into it, and it'll be a little bit cleaner, a little bit tighter. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this tutorial, and yeah, leave us some comments and some on the blog post. Take care.
Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, I'm going to open up Adobe Photoshop, and I'm going to create a new document, and let's just call it print layout. I'm going to set some parameters first of all, so let's go for centimeters. Let's make it 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters, and the resolution is going to be 360. So essentially, the 60 by 60 centimeters is going to be the full repeat. In other words, our print will repeat every 60 centimeters. So when you look at this fabric, the repeat should not be that obvious. If you're using a much smaller square, let's say 10 cm by 10 cm, every 10 centimeters you'd get the repeat. So this is a good size. In fact, let's make it 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters. Let's keep the file size down a little bit. And also the resolution is going to be 360. So here we have a beautifully large repeat, and we also have a high resolution. And this actually affects our filters later on. I'll show you that a bit later. But anyway, also let's have a background. We have a few different choices here. You can have transparent, you can select a background color, we can have white, but essentially our print is going to have a black background. So I'm just going to click black and then create. So this is our 50 centimeter square. Let me just increase size. Here we go. This is our 50 centimeter square, so 0 to 50 you can see, and then 0 to 50 down here as well. So this is essentially what we're going to be using to create our print. And if you see on the right hand side here, you can click layers. And if you can't find that, let's go to Window and then Layers. And this is our background, okay? And you can turn that on and off. Well, if it's unlocked, we can. There we go. You can turn it on and off. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to get some source imagery. Now, if you've been following our tutorials, or sorry, our video blog posts on the PatternLab video blog blog site, you will know that last episode, season 1, episode 5, we actually showed you how to create your very own source imagery. And we used pink oriental lilies and palm fronds. And let's just simply open up these images. So as you can see here, we have a whole bunch of source images which we created in that video blog episode. If you want to know how to do this yourself, then simply have a look at season 1 episode 5, and you can actually download all 200 plus images that we created. But for this tutorial, I don't want to use all those 200 images, I just want to use the very best. So this is my selection. I've simply created a folder on my desktop called Selected Print Images. And I've just selected the images that I love the most and placed them into that folder so they're easy to find and easy to use. You can also download this pack free of charge on this video blog post on the PatternLab website. So if you're on YouTube, just simply click the link in the description and you'll be on that blog post page, and you can download this pack and follow along with this tutorial. But first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into that folder and I'm just going to select all of them, so Command A to select everything, and I'm just going to then drag them onto the Photoshop icon. and they should all open up in Photoshop as individual images, which is fantastic. Let's just close down that folder and let's maximize this. Okay, so also in the right hand corner here you can see these two double arrows. If you click on that, you'll see all the images that you've added to Adobe Photoshop, and also your print layout, okay, which is what we're going to be creating this print on. So if we go to the first image here, just click. What we need to do is essentially cut this flower from the background and then place it into our print layout. And we want to do that with all of these images. And to do that, it's pretty simple. We're just going to go to our magic wand. If you hover over it, you can see that it gives you, so magic wand tool is W is the shortcut key for that. So if you hit W on your keyboard, you'll see that it brings up the magic wand. So just, there's something else to mention as well. We have a tolerance. Now tolerance is important because when you're using the magic wand, it selects colors of a similar color. Okay, so if you click black, it should select everything that's black. However, if your tolerance is high, let's make that 100, or even let's make it higher, 150, and I select the black, you'll see it starting to pick up other colors, okay, because your tolerance is very high. So you want to keep that quite low. So let's go 10, and you'll see that it'll only pick up the black. If we go to the green, it'll only pick up greens that are of a similar green. Okay, so if we make this 100, and I click on the green, you'll see that it'll pick up a lot more green. If we turn it down to, let's say, 40, it'll pick up greens that are only slightly similar. 30, for example. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So just keep your tolerance quite low, keep it 10, click on the black background, and then it'll obviously select that background. However, we want the flower, not the background, so we're going to go select and then invert selection, or inverse. What that does is it simply inverts the selection, so now we have the flower selected. So if I go edit, cut, you'll see that we're cutting the flower and not the background, and that's really important. So let's just go edit, copy, let's go to our print layout and go edit and then paste. I'm just pasting that flower onto our new print page. I'm not going to worry about the scale or the placement or sizing at this point in time, or rotation. I'm just going to leave it there. I want to essentially get all of these images into that print page. So let's just select invert. So let's do that again. So let's go W for magic wand, click on the background. Now I'm going to use the shortcut for select inverse, which is Shift Command I on my keyboard. I'm just going to go Control C to copy and then Control V to paste. And then we can just simply click on the move tool, move it up. Let's go to the next one. Once again, W for the magic wand, Shift Control I to invert selection, Control C to copy, print layout, Control V. I'm just going to keep placing these. Let's just get rid of this one. Let's go to the next one. Shift Control I, copy, V, paste it on. Next one. Shift Control I, copy, V, paste it on. Okay, so as you can see now we're starting to build up a print. Well, I mean, essentially at the moment it's pretty basic. It doesn't even look like a print. It's just a series of flowers. So the next job I need, let me just imagine that we've pasted all of these flowers, all of these open documents onto this one page. But I'm going to show you that a finished one later. We now need to have a look at the scaling and position. So obviously these are huge. If this is a 50 centimeter square, these flowers are absolutely massive. So I want to transform and scale these to make them slightly smaller, and also rotate them and place them to create an aesthetically pleasing layout for our print. So first of all, if you go to, let's have a look at our layers over here, and you can get to that by going Window and then Layers. We have our different layers, and they're all on there as individual items, all individually selectable, which is great. So now what I'm going to do is, in the top left hand corner here, you see you have auto select ticked. If it's unticked, what happens is you're always working with that one, and then you have to select another layer in the layers chart and then move that one. If you click auto select, it allows you to click on the flower and it will automatically select that layer. So if you look over here on the right, I'm just selecting different ones, and that just makes it much easier when it comes to moving your images around and selecting them and playing with them, okay, which is really important. So let's go to this one here, and let's go to Edit and then Free Transform, which is also Control T shortcut on the keyboard. And it gives you a bounding box, and as you can see here, if you click on this little corner, click and drag, it will scale that flower. If you hold down the Shift key, it will free transform it, okay, but don't, because obviously you don't want a flower that looks like that. So just simply larger, smaller. So I want to make these quite small because I want this to be quite a nice big repeat. And you can also see, if you click on the little edge or corner here, it'll give you a rotate symbol, and you can rotate that to position it however you want. And you can also move it into position. Hit the Enter key to then finish that free transform. Let's do the same for this one. Control T is free transform, and let's make it of a similar scale of size to our other one here, so maybe slightly larger. And let's rotate it, maybe like this perhaps. I'm just going to start to build these up, and I'm adding a little bit of spacing between these, okay? So let's just transform, let's just maybe move this one in, a little bit smaller. So I'm trying to positioning these with a little bit with the similar space around them, also the rotation, so the flowers are kind of not all going in one direction. They look randomly placed, but in a non-random way. Same with this one, let's just scale it. Let's maybe put this one up here, for example, or no, let's maybe put it down here. So I'm just going to be doing this for all of them. So imagine you had all of those lily flowers on there. We just want to do exactly the same. Just move them, rotate them, give them the similar kind of spacing, just to create a really beautiful print. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one I made earlier. So obviously you'd fill this whole page with similar, with all your imagery. Let's go File, Open. Okay, first print PSD. Let's open this up, and this will be available to download on the blog post page as well. So as you can see here, obviously I have all my flowers on the page, and I have rotated them and scaled them to create an aesthetically pleasing layout, okay, which is lovely. And you'll see that none of them are overlapping over the page, okay, they're all contained, apart from that little one there. Let's move it in a bit. They're all contained within our print, okay, do not have any going off the side like this, okay. And so once you've created a nice layout, we're then going to move on to the next step, which is essentially turning this into a full repeat. So to turn this into a full repeat, the concept is pretty straightforward, but probably doing it on Photoshop might be a little bit confusing. So I'm going to just go through it and kind of like follow it as best you can. Ideally, what we're trying to do is make the bottom edge and the top edge match. And the easiest way to do that is simply to cut the top of this print, remove this top edge, move it down to the bottom, and then move that edge up to the top. And that way, this edge here will be at the bottom, and this edge here will be at the top. So when you tile them vertically, they will match, and we do the same for the left and the right. But it's always easier if I just demonstrate. So first of all, we have all these layers down the side here, and they're all our individual plants, which is great. But we want to essentially get all of these on the same layer, so they're one item. Okay. Also, at this point, I would suggest saving this document in case you want to tweak or play around with this layout later. So let's just save this, and I've saved it as first print, but you could say, let's just save it on our desktop as initial print layout. All layers, because they're all individual layers at this point. So the flowers are all on individual layers. Click OK. Okay. So next what we're going to do is we're going to merge all these together. So let's just go to layer 16. Let's go to the top, hold down the Shift key, and click on the top, and this will select all of those layers apart from the background. We do not want to select the background layer. I'm then going to right click on here and just go, oops, hang on, let's go down, and then go merge layers. Okay, now this will merge all of our flowers together, which is looking great, and obviously the background is going to be separate. So now let's get on with our full repeat. So once again, let me just grab a ruler. So if we hit Control R on our keyboard, it will bring up the rulers. Let's just bring this down to, let's say that's roughly halfway. So I'm going to get my rectangular selection tool here. I'm going to make sure my flower layer is selected. I'm going to click and drag, and I'm then going to go Edit and then Cut. Actually, no, before I do that, I want to create some registration marks. The reason why is because let's just cut this out. So Edit, Cut. And then we're going to take this layer here, so let's go to our Move tool. Let's click on that layer, and let's move it to the top. But you see, the problem is it's going to move around, and I'm not quite sure exactly, where it's going to match up. I need to define the edges of my document. Okay, I need to make sure that this edge will always be lined up. So what I'm going to do is, let's go back. I'm then going to get my selection tool. I'm going to click and drag on this edge here. And I'm also going to hold down the Shift key and click and drag over this edge as well. And I'm then just going to fill it with white. So I'm just going to double click here, make sure that's white, click OK, then go Edit, and then make sure the layer is selected, Edit, and then Fill. Click OK. So I now have these two white strips. So now when I cut this upper half, so Edit, Cut, when I move this up, you can see that I know exactly where the edge of my document is. which is perfect. So I've created some almost like registration marks. Also, another thing to mention, you might, so if you go to View and then untick Snap, see this is going to be a problem for you, okay? You need to make sure that your document has Snap, because then what happens is, instead of trying to fiddle around with it, you're not quite getting it right, go View, Snap. What it'll do is it will lock it to the confines of, or the borders of your page, which makes it much easier when it comes to placing. So now I'm going to go Edit and then paste in that original upper panel, okay? And so now, you see how I've got those white edges? I know exactly where that print's going to be. So when I lock it to the bottom, like that, I know that that is going to match that perfectly. And that is going to match that perfectly. Otherwise, before, without those white edges, you know, God knows where that print's going to be. So that just kind of like defines the edges of our borders, or our print. Okay, so next we have, so now we know that the top and the bottom match, okay? That's a repeat. It's a vertical repeat, but it's not a horizontal repeat. So what I need to do is simply merge these two layers together. We want to make them one entire piece. So let's just select those, right click and then go down and go merge layers. I can also then remove these white edges. We don't need these anymore. So go to your rectangular selection tool, delete, and then delete. Just hit delete or backspace on your keyboard. So let's get rid of this ruler, because now we want to do the same but from the horizontal perspective. So let's just go to the middle of that document. I'm just clicking and dragging. Just to get that ruler, I'm just simply clicking in the ruler and dragging out until we get to the middle of our document, which is there. Let's then next go to our selection tool. I'm just going to select the right-hand side, the left-hand side, sorry, of our print. And I'm going to go, make sure you've got that layer selected, edit, cut. And then next, let's go to our move tool. And I'm just going to slide this along. Now we should have, there should be some little pieces that allow you to define the top and bottom. We don't need those white bars anymore because look, it's locking nicely because we already have some information here and here, which is hard to see, but it's there. So I'm just going to slide that across to the, so I'm going to slide the right panel across to the left. I'm then going to go Edit and paste in my original left panel and slide that over to the right, like that. Which is lovely. So now we know the top and the bottom repeat, and the left and the right repeat. And let's just get rid of that ruler. And so now you can see it's looking fab. And let me just show you that repeat. So first of all, let's just merge these two layers together. Merge layers. Let's zoom out a little bit. And let's go Edit Canvas Size. Is it Edit Canvas Size? I normally use shortcuts for this. File Canvas Size. Image canvas size, sorry, there we go. So I normally use the shortcut, which is I think Shift Command and C. So let's just turn this to 125. So we're going to basically increase the canvas size, not the image size, but the canvas size. Click OK. And so now, if I select that layer and hit Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste, you can now see that, hopefully this works. When I put that in, you can see that it repeats left to right, and it also repeats top to bottom. And that is essentially how you create a fully repeating print. And it's simple once you get the hang of it. Okay, there we go. However, we've got a slight issue with our print. So let's just go back. Hitting Control Z will go back through your actions, and Shift Control Z will go forward. So back, 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 forward, forward, forward. So this is looking fab. There is just one issue, which is essentially we have a lot of space here, a lot of space here, and a lot of space here, and that's, you know, understandable because we've kind of just knocked these two sides together. So now what I want to do is I want to select this layer and I want to start to balance or proportion these flowers or distribute them a little bit better. So I'm just going to get my selection tool. I'm going to select this flower and only this flower. I don't want to go into the other ones, just this flower. And then I'm going to get my move tool. I'm just going to move it maybe into the center here. And you can even transform it, rotate it like you did before. You can even scale it if you want to fill a bit more space. So we're just going to proportion these flowers out. Same with this one. Let's just move this one into the center a little bit. Let's maybe scale it up a tad. We can rotate it perhaps, move it down. Let's maybe go to this one. Oops, make sure the layer is selected. And then we can just maybe scale this up a little bit perhaps. Same with this one. Just move it over. Oops, you see I'm taking a little bit of that edge there. We don't want to do that. See that flower is getting involved, so let's just make sure we're just taking the flower. Just this flower here. Let's rotate that a little bit. We can move it over to the side perhaps. Okay, so just get that spacing as perfect as possible, and you can take as much time over this or as little time as you like. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on it because we want to crack on, but you kind of get the idea. Okay, so we can maybe space these out a little bit better, but that's the concept. So next what we're going to do is we have our lovely repeating print, and we also have the spacing is now even, so it looks fab. Actually, what I'm going to do is I am going to take this down a little bit. I might speed this process up a bit, but I just want to get this looking good. Yeah, I mean, it's better. It's not amazing, but it'll work. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to then start to look at adding, obviously changing the colors of this, maybe pulling, it's quite a bright print, maybe pulling it down, making it a bit more classic, also adding a bit more color, and yeah, playing around with hue and saturation. But essentially that's how we kind of create a full repeat print from our source imagery. Okay, so let's create some color effects and play around this print or experiment with this print a little bit more. But first of all, before we do that, we have our full repeat here, and I want to save this because any changes I make in the future, it's going to be hard to go back. So it's always good to save your work as you go along. So let's just save this as, and let's call it full repeat print. Oops. Full repeat print, no effects. Click OK. Okay, so now let's play around with this print. So let's just zoom in. First of all, I want to show you a little bit about color layers. So over here in our layers palette, we can just obviously click on this or go to Window and then Layers. I'm going to add a new layer, which is this little icon down here. So click Add New Layer, and as you can see, it goes on the very, very top. And you can rearrange these. It can be below your flower layer, it can be on top, it can be wherever you want it to be. But essentially for now, we want to put this on top of our flower layer. Okay, that's our flower layer, and this is just a layer that we haven't added anything to yet. So let's just zoom in and show you what we're going to do here. So we have this new layer, and up here we have a whole range of different filters we can add to that layer, and I'm going to click Color. Okay, and we also have opacity. You can change the opacity of this as well, but I want it at about 100%, and let's just click Color. So click on this layer, and then we're going to go over to, we're going to select a color. Now I want to play around with, let's say I want to add a bit of pink to these lilies. They're a little bit kind of dull. Let's go for a nice hot pink, which is this. Next I'm going to go to my brush tool, which is just here. And then as you can see, you've got a few options. And you have opacity, you have normal, and you have the size of your brush. So at the moment, as you can see, if I just hover on the page, you can see the size of this brush. And to be fair, it's actually quite a nice size. I'm happy with the size of that brush, but you can actually change it to be smaller, you see? And you can also change it to be much, much larger, and it can be massive if you want it to. But I'm going to keep it about 460. That's a nice amount, maybe a little bit less. Yeah, 428. And the opacity, I'm going to make it, so instead of being 100, so if I click, you see, we get quite a bright color here. I want to change the opacity to be about, let's make it about 11 or 10%. So now when I add it, it's very, very subtle. Okay, I'm just changing it very, very subtly. Now, because we're on a color layer, it's actually just coloring it. If we were to have normal, you would see that it would be a brush. So if I change it to color, you see how all these do different filters and effects, okay? But we're going to use color. So let's just get rid of that. So Control Z to just remove all of those. So let's keep it on color, opacity 100. Let's go to our brush. We've got hot pink selected, and we're going to make this 10% opacity. And then we're just going to start to fill these with a little bit of color just at the base. And 10% is quite slight, so I have to do quite a few clicks here. Same with this one. If you do it over the green of the leaf, you're going to have some issues. So maybe when it's just covering, just do it off to the side. Same with this one, a little bit of blushing. A little bit here as well, just to add a little bit of color to these beautiful lilies. And you can do this with any color that you want to. It can be blue, pink, green, purple, whatever. Simply select the color you wish in the side. So let's just add, I'm doing this very, very quickly. You can spend a bit more time doing this if you like. But yeah, let's go down, let's add it to all of them. Yeah, looking gorgeous. Same with this one, very nice. At the moment, this print is looking very rough, very basic. It just looks like someone's taken some photos. So I'm going to show you a little bit later some actual filters that will turn this into more of an artistic, yeah, a little bit more artistic, make it a bit prettier. Okay, so now we've added our pink, which is fab. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use hue and saturation. Okay, so this is pink. So if I go to, obviously this is our color layer. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and then Hue and Saturation. You can change exposure, vibrance, color balance, all this kind of stuff. You can play around with these if you want to. Everything will create something different, but I'm going to look at Hue and Saturation. And this is a very easy way to change colors of your print very quickly. So Hue, obviously, will change the hue of that color layer. So now we're getting into oranges or yellows. Next we go into greens, and then finally into blues. Other end of the spectrum, different kind of blue. Okay, so this is a really quick way of changing those color layers. You can even up the saturation, which might do nothing or might do quite a lot, it depends. Or you can pull it right down, so it's pretty much non-existent. Okay, so you can change the saturation also. But let's just keep that exactly as it was. But I want to show you hue and saturation with these flowers. So for example, let's just remove the color layer completely for now. This is our original source imagery, which is great, but I don't know, it's looking very obvious as photos. I want to turn it create it a little bit more of a class. Sorry, I want to create a more classic idea of this. So I want to maybe pull the colors down of my flowers. So let's go onto the flower layer and let's go to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. And so it's almost like we're retouching these flowers. So I'm just going to change this, going to give it a bit more of a yellow tone, just to create more of like a, yeah, I don't know, more of a Renaissance kind of feel. We can pull the saturation down as well, so a little bit darker. You see how this is now changing it to create a more, maybe aesthetically pleasing look. Okay, and then if we add our color layer in, we still get that beautiful pink, but we have that much softer, sort of like more olivey green of the plant. So there's ways you can kind of like play around with the colors of each of these layers. Also, there's one other thing to mention, which is they're very stalky. Okay, these flowers have got these really horrible stalks, which is not particularly pleasing. So what I'm going to do is I want to maybe kind of like feel like these fade into the background. I like this idea where this leaf is not quite there. It's kind of like faded out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my flower layer. I'm going to go to my eraser tool. I'm going to make the opacity 10%, and then the size of the brush, yeah, probably about ooh, that's huge. About 476. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to, because its opacity is 10%, we're taking away little bits. So I'm just going to remove that stalk completely, just clicking a lot, and then just blend ever so slightly. So these flowers almost feel like they're coming out of the depths of our print. And we can even, you know, do it to other aspects of these plants. And we're just simply erasing that flower layer, and we're seeing the black background kind of come through. So I'm just going to take out all of these stems and just have them a little bit darker, so it's a bit more aesthetically pleasing. Okay, which is looking fab. I might speed this bit up, but anyway. Yeah, looking great. You see how it kind of like, the print is just a little bit softer, because those stalks really draw your eye. I mean, for example, look at the state of this. It's pretty horrific. So we're just going to completely remove that, and then just blend that in, just by clicking. Lovely. Let's move down. Let's get this one as well. Maybe not too much work on that one. Lovely. Yeah, really nice. So just like soften these up a little bit. Maybe 10% is a bit too weak. You could always try 20%, spend a little bit less time, but I prefer it to be softer. And if you make any mistakes, you can always just go Control Z and cycle back through. Yeah, there's one hell of a stalk there. But also remember, whatever you do to this side, you kind of have to do to this side as well. So I'm just going to leave that edge completely untouched, so we don't have to worry about this side too much. Okay, I think that's pretty much all of our stalks, apart from this one. Okay, so it's now becoming a much softer prettier print. So it's not, you're not drawn in so much. See, those stalks really stick out. I'm going to start repeating myself. Okay, so that's our print, looking lovely, but it still feels very obvious, you know, as photographic flowers. And that pink layer, maybe it's a bit too bright. Also, maybe I don't want it just to always be pink. Maybe let's go to our color layer. Let's select just the color, okay, of this one, and let's go to hue and saturation, and maybe make that, I don't know, yellow, so we can have pink and yellow. Yeah, something like that perhaps. Maybe you want to do that for this one. And also, it'll remember your last selection here. So we created the last one yellow, it's going to remember that again, and just apply it. Let's go to this one, hue and saturation. Okay, so you can play around with these. And let's do this one as well. Maybe this one. Okay. And then once again, we can just do hue and saturation to this entire color layer and really have some fun. So you can build up color layers, you can do all kinds of things. You can change the hue and saturation of it. As I said, this is just the very basics of kind of print design at the moment with Photoshop. I mean, you can even add a new layer. So let's just add a new layer. And let's maybe get some little dots. So let's go to our brush, let's select hot pink. Well, no, let's maybe go for a nice blue. And then let's get our brush and make it really small, so they're like little dots. Let's have a look, let's go in, and let's pull this up to opacity to be 100. So my brush is now opacity 100. I've got a blue fill, and let's just maybe do something like that. I don't know, some little speckles or something. And let's turn that to color layer. I mean, that might be good, it might not be good, it depends what you're looking for. You can even bring the opacity down. You see? You can just change the opacity to maybe make those a little bit more interesting. So you can add all kinds of different effects to these. It's completely up to you. Maybe let's make this brush a little bit larger. Let's make the opacity 10, and let's do like a blue blur over the top of this one. So you're almost like painting your flowers. Really, really fun, really interesting kind of stuff. So I'm just adding loads. Let's maybe make that 30 so we get a bit more of effect here. Oops. 30. Okay, so I'm just showing you that you can literally do pretty much anything and experiment and have some fun with these. You could do it to all of them if you wanted to. Okay, but anyway, let's move on to our second stage, which is probably the most interesting, I guess. It'll have the greatest effect on your print. But anyway, before we move on to that, which is essentially adding filters to our print, let's just save this. So I'm going to remove that little color layer, okay? Let's just delete that. And let's just save this as full repeat print color effects. How about that? Not filter, but color effects. Okay, so let's move on to filters, which is probably the most interesting or exciting part of the tutorial. So now we've obviously added our source imagery, we've created our full repeat, we've added color layers, we've also changed the hue and saturation of our original source imagery to create something a bit more classic. Actually, I really hate the green and the yellow. Let's go for something a bit more natural. Let's go for like a pink and yellow, I guess. Okay, we're going to start using filters. Now these are really fun. So first of all, before we use filters, we need to make sure that our entire document is locked. Not locked, sorry, all one layer, because we're applying the filter to the entire print and not just the color layer or this layer or this layer. So let's just select all of these. So just click on layer 2, hold down the shift key, click on the top layer, right click, and we're going to go merge layers. So it's one. Okay, we now have this one finished full final print. And it's always good to save your document before we compress this, because going back is a nightmare and you don't want to redo all of those steps. So save at every single step in the journey. So let's just go File. So let's select the layer 15. Let's go Filter, and let's go to Filter Gallery. Okay. It might take a little bit of time to load, depending on the power of your computer or how fast it is, and also the size of your print. Mine's taking a little bit of time to load because I'm also doing a video capture or screen capture. But okay, here we go. So, at the moment what we have is, and you can zoom in and out, Control plus to zoom in, Control minus to zoom out. Let's zoom in a little bit. In fact, what I'm going to do is, to speed this up, I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to take just a little section of this print. Let's just take this little area here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to create a new document, and I'm going to paste it Oh, that didn't work. Ah, okay. Select the layer, copy it. Let's get rid of that one. Control New. Create. Paste that new one in. So we're working with a much smaller space, which means the file size is going to be far smaller. Let's just get rid of that background. Let's just go to Filter, just to give me an idea of what filter I might want to use. Let's go to Filter Gallery. You don't have to do this. You can do it on your one. This is this will load far quicker, which is fab. Okay, so this is our little print snippet. And as you can see, we already have some poster edges and some grain here, which is what I kind of had a look at before. So I quite like this concept. Let me just write down these settings so I have them for later. So 0, 1, 6 poster, because I want to use some other settings. And the grain is going to be 548. Fab. Okay, so let's just remove these, and you can delete a layer or a filter just by deleting. So let's just expand all of these, and you can see all the different things that you can do to this print, which is quite amazing. So first of all, let's go to coloured pencil, and it should load quite quickly. So here you can see coloured pencil does something quite dramatic, but this might be pretty ugly. However, you can play around with the pencil width, the stroke pressure, even like the paper brightness. Okay, I'm not saying this is aesthetically pleasing. Depending on your print and what you do, you just play around and experiment with these settings, and you can create something quite interesting. Think about cutout, for example. Okay, so cutout essentially cuts the plant or the image into different color levels. So we can do 5 levels, so we're just getting 5 colors here, which creates a more minimalistic, simplistic print. Edge simplicity, if we take it down to 0, it'll be a very abstract print, although it's not really working. Edge simplicity 10. Okay, no, sorry. So the higher the number, the more abstract or simplistic that edge is. Obviously, the less. And fidelity as well. It depends how it actually constrains to those colors. Let's go to dry brush. Have a look at this one as well. So a little bit softer, something a little bit more interesting. Let's have a look at brush size. So you can really experiment and play and tweak and see which particular filters you enjoy. Let's have a look at maybe palette knife. Different effect altogether. Stroke size, stroke detail. Play around with them. Plastic wrap even. Maybe not a great effect. Poster edges, which is one that I love. I love this whole kind of idea of, it's almost like a botanical illustration. You know, you find in those really beautiful botanical books. So I love this poster edges, but you can also play around with the edge thicknesses, edge intensity, posterization. It's completely up to you, but I think I had it set on 0116, sorry, 016, which gives a really lovely soft feel. Okay, let's have a look at some other ones. Rough pastels. You want something a little bit more kind of like ghosty or blurry, but you see how we're turning this photographic image into something a bit more artistic. And you can play around with these as well. Stroke detail, you really have a bit of fun. Stroke length, relief, scaling, whatever. Smudge stick, very different. Intensity. So I'm not going to go through every single one, or in much detail, but it just gives you an idea. Watercolor might be a nice one. Let's have a look at that. It will take a bit of time to load watercolor. Let's go to brush detail, intensity, texture maybe. Yeah, I mean it's not amazing, but it gives you an idea. Accented edges gives you almost like a little ghost effect. Brightness up, have the edge width quite small. Smoothness could be quite nice. Yeah, I mean that's quite pretty. You could use that, for example. Angled strokes. See how it goes. Direction, balance, stroke length, sharpness. Take the sharpness off. So play around, but you have a whole heap of these to choose from. I mean, graphic pen. You get some really quite dynamic. Ooh, halftones are actually quite interesting. That's lovely. Yeah. Stamp. Nope. Water paper. Could be quite interesting. So yeah, play around, experiment. But there is one amazing thing you can do as well in the filters profile. So I mentioned that I liked, poster edges, I believe it was. But you can also add filters. So I can add yet more poster edges, or I can go to maybe, say, grain, and add a grain to it, or maybe mosaic tiles, or water paper. I mean, let's add a whole bunch of layers in here. Let's go to halftone pattern. Let's then also go to chalk and charcoal. I mean, it's going to be a mess, but it just shows you what you can do once it starts to load anyway. So just really play around and experiment. I mean, this is a nightmare. So take off posters. Let's take off chalk and charcoal. See what that does. It'll take time to load. Maybe halftone pattern as well. So as I said, you can queue these up and create different textures and layers. It's pretty much limitless. Anyway, I'm going to stop right about now. Let's just remove these. And let's go to, I want poster edges, and I also want a grain, I think, quite like a grain. Let's just change that to be 5 and 48, which is what we had before. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to click OK, and that will now apply it to my little snippet print here. But obviously, if you're going to be working on the main one, then let's just apply it to the main one. So if you go Filter, and you go Filter Gallery at the top, not this one, this will apply your existing selection in the filter gallery to your new print, or to the larger print. So you can always play around with a much smaller snippet, and then once you're happy, apply it to the main print, just to speed up your process. Okay, let's shut that one down. Let's don't save it, and let's have a look at what we have. Okay, so something that's quite interesting. Well, we've lost a bit of leaf there, that's fine. So yeah, something that's a little bit more interesting. But you see how we've kind of turned your print from a photographic image into something that's a little bit more artistic. Okay, so I just want to explain a little bit about image size and filters. So when we first created this document, the image size was actually 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters, and the resolution was 360 dpi. So let's just take a little subsection of this. Let's just take this little area here, copy, and let's create a new document. And let's paste it in. So this one is the original size, 360 dpi. But I want to, let's say, create a new document and paste it in again. But this time, we're going to go to Image, Image Size, and reduce the image size from 360 to 150. So it's much smaller. Okay, the quality is far less. You can see the pixelation already starting to appear. Okay, lots of pixelation. So we now have two different versions. So let's go to the original size, which is 360 dpi. Let's go to Filter, and then Filter Gallery. And let's apply, let's go for, what's a good one? Probably rough pastels. So I'm going to use the same settings, 11, 16, all this is going to be exactly the same. I'm going to zoom in, and you can see that this is a far more delicate filter. Let's click OK to apply it. Let's then go to our much smaller, the 150 dpi, let's go Filter, Filter Gallery, and apply the last filter. And as you can see, because the image resolution is smaller, it's a far more dramatic effect. Okay, let's just cut this and paste it next to it. Okay, you can see the difference between the two. This has got a far more dramatic effect than it has on this one. So image size can play a really important part when it comes to creating your print. So if you want something that's really quite exaggerated, then just simply reduce the image size. You can then always afterwards increase the image size back to 360. Oops. It might take a little bit of time to do that. So there we go. So we're using that filter, that really dramatic filter, which we created using the smaller image size, and then we just simply scaled it up to 360 again. Okay, so that's just important thing to mention, because you might find that when you scale or resize your images, the filters might have very different effects on them. So with all these different techniques that you can use, it is literally limitless what you can actually create. Not only that, but depending on the source imagery that you use, I mean, if you try like maybe a fur or an animal print or something else, you know, it's amazing how many different things you can create. Some will be awful, some will be amazing, some will be average like this print. But anyway, so what I'm going to do next is show you a little bit about using layers or multiple layers. So let's just close these. Nope. Don't save. Okay, so we've talked about color layers and also filters, but what about actually adding a source imagery layer? So let's say we want to maybe put some palm leaves behind this print to make it a little bit fuller, a bit richer, just to create some more interesting print. Well, that's pretty simple. So what I've done is I've actually gone to my source imagery folder, which is obviously free for you guys to download on the blog post page, which is the selected print images. And I've just simply taken one of these palm leaves, I think this one for example, pulled it into Photoshop. I've then cut it out using the same techniques we saw in the beginning of this tutorial, and I've pasted it onto a brand new document which is 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters and has a resolution of 360 dpi, which is fantastic. And what I've done is simply pasted loads of them on. I've then simply rotated, scaled and positioned to create an aesthetically pleasing print. And obviously I've created the full repeat just simply by cutting the top from the bottom, arranging, and then cutting the left from the right, and then arranging, till we have this beautiful full repeat. And then what I've done is I've simply pasted it into my document here with all the layers. You see here we have palm layer. Let's just pull that up, and as you can see it's actually underneath the flower layer. And it looks pretty atrocious, but that's fine. Let me just close this down to save some memory. But there's one important thing to mention. So here, let's go to Edit, and then, where is it? Free Transform. Okay, so I've pasted it in, but the problem is that it might not be exactly the right size. So if it is, for some reason it comes in like this, for example, it's not going to repeat at all. So we need to essentially move it. So let's go to our Move tool. I'm going to click and drag that to the top of the page. Okay, so it's locked to the top and it's locked to the left. I'm going to go to Edit, and then, where is it? Transform, Free Transform. I'm going to click and drag this bottom corner. I'm going to hold down the Shift key as well, which allows me to really free transform it. I'm going to lock it to the right, and I'm going to lock it to the bottom. And what that does is it ensures that the top edge matches the bottom edge and the left edge matches the right edge. Now we know that that works. We know that our flowers match left and right and top and bottom. So essentially transforming that so it matches the four edges, we'll do the same for our palm. So this now should be a fully repeating print for both the flower and the palm layer, which is fantastic. Okay, but it's looking pretty atrocious. I'm not a massive fan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with this palm layer a little bit. So I'm going to select the palm layer. I'm going to go to Edit, and let's go to actually no Image, Adjustment, and then Hue and Saturation. Now I'm going to bring the hue in line with the lilies, so a little bit greener, a little more olivey, a little bit more olive. A saturation down a little bit just so they're not so bright. That's a bit better, a bit more khaki. And you know what? They're very bright. They get in the way. So I'm going to pull that brightness right down. Okay. I want to ghost them so they're almost not even there. You can take them even further down if you want. It's completely up to you. I think that's quite nice though. Just click OK. And already this print is starting to look so much nicer. But what if I want to add, let's say, a colour layer to these palms as well, just to make them look prettier? Well, actually, first of all, I quite like this print, so I'm going to save it. So I'm going to Shift Control Save. For repeat, palm, oh not plam, palm and flower, okay, with, okay, no colour effects. There we go, click Save. Okay, click OK. And so next what I'm going to do is, let's add some colour effects to these palms. So I'm going to remove the flower layer, just make it invisible, same with the flower colour layer. And let's just go to the palm layer and add a new layer on top of it. Let's call this palm color layer, and you can move this up and down, but let's just make sure it's on top of the palm layer but below the flower layer. And once again I'm going to get a nice blue color this time. Double click, nice little turquoise. Let's go to our brush tool. 460 is a good size, opacity is pretty good at 30, and let's just make sure this is color rather than normal, and then we can just start to paint these in. Yeah, it looks nice. In fact, you know what? This might be beautiful just as a print on its own. There we go. Lovely. And you know what? I'm just going to save this as Palm Experiment 1. Save. Okay, so now let's just add in our flower layer and also the flower color layer. Okay, this is looking quite dynamic, interesting. Wouldn't say it's amazing, but we can always just play around with the flower layer. Let's maybe pull down the saturation on this. Okay, so it's using the existing settings I had, which is creating something quite interesting. So maybe let's just keep the saturation up a little bit. Let's take the lightness up a bit as well. I mean, yeah, that could work. Why not? And this before we've even actually added our filters as well. So let's just once again save this as Flower Palm Neon Experiment. I mean, name them whatever you want. Okay, so now we've got something that I'm actually quite interested in. It looks quite fun. Actually, let's just take down the opacity of that color layer. Yeah, it's a little bit bright before. Lovely. Now we've got something we actually quite like. Let's just save that. I now want to play around with some filters. So I'm just going to merge all of these layers together. So it's one item, merge layers. Alright, so let's add some filters to this. So as I said, I've just locked these entire layers. If this is a little bit jerky, it's because I'm having to do lots of small recordings because the memory of my computer is not handling screen recording and the size of these files. So I'm losing videos. Please bear with me. Okay, so yeah, we have this beautiful print that we've created, but I want to add a filter to this just to make it a little bit less photoreal. And that's what I mean by photoreal. It's a bit too obvious that it's created from source imagery. So I've locked all these layers together, merged them all. I'm going to take a small little subsection just to keep the file size down. Let's just go copy, so Control C, Control N for a new document. Click OK, hit Control V. And here I'm going to go Filter and then Filter Gallery. Alright, already we've got a rough pastels, which is looking pretty horrific. Let's go open up all of these and let's just play, experiment. Okay, so cutout, edge simplicity, edge fidelity. Maybe this this is, it's all subjective. Maybe you like this, maybe you don't. Dry brush could be an interesting concept. Brush size, brush detail. As I said, play around with it, experiment, have some fun. Film grain, fresco, neon glow, paint daubs. It's quite interesting. Palette knife. Once again, you can just play around with the so stroke size. Take that down. Okay, so that's looking quite interesting. Change the stroke size. Make it a bit more abstract. Plastic wrap, never. Poster edges, I always love poster edges, but maybe it's just not right. Edge thickness, edge intensity, it's up to you. Rough pastels, interesting. Let's pull the stroke length down. Stroke detail, play around with it, have some fun. So yeah, all different kinds of effects. And once again, you can always build up filters. So for example, let's go for watercolor perhaps. It's a bit aggressive. We take the texture down, shadow intensity down, brush detail down a bit. Okay, let's say that works. Let's just then add a new layer and let's call this, let's add grain to it, or maybe a diffuse glow perhaps. Nope. Glass, nope. Ocean ripple. Mosaic tiles, grain. I'm not really thinking about this too much, I'm just kind of playing around so you can see what adding layers to this or adding filters. Wow, what happened there? Okay, just showing you what you can kind of do. Let's just click OK, and there we have a new print. I'm not saying it's beautiful, but it's less photoreal. And if you want to, even at this stage, so actually let's just apply this filter to our entire print. Filter, this is the last filter that we applied. It will take a little bit of time. Okay, I mean I'm not overly happy with it, but you get the idea. Let's just close this down. Let's also save this as experiment 2 maybe. And once again you can also do hue and saturation, and once again completely change the color of your print. Completely up to you. You can have a lot of fun with this. Saturation maybe up, you can really ghost it, you can pull the saturation right down, have it black and white. So the changes and amendments you can make are absolutely endless. But I'm going to stick with this one for now. So yeah, that's pretty much print design in a nutshell. Next I'm going to show you how to then save this to send to a digital print company such as Spoonflower, who will then obviously print this digitally onto material, any material choice you can think of, even velvet perhaps. So yeah, it's an amazing tool, really good fun. So obviously, play around with it, see how you feel. Okay, so once you've kind of finished your print, let's talk a little bit about image size and also printing. So at the moment our print is 60 centimeters wide. Now what I can do is, if your screen resolution is set to the correct resolution, in other words, let's go to system settings and then we have displays. So this is the default, in other words this is the screen resolution which is standard to your monitor. So at the moment I'm using a far smaller size just for this tutorial, but if you had it on your default, when you went to go view and then, where is it, 100%, that would tell you the size of your print. Now, this is quite large, and obviously it will be different on your screen because you're obviously watching this on YouTube or on our blog. But essentially, if you wanted to actually see the size of your print, you just go 100%, and as long as your screen resolution is at its default, essentially what would be on screen would be the size of the print, theoretically. However, the best way to check this is to just simply go File and then Print on your A4 printer or whatever printer you have at home. We just scroll down. Just make sure it is 100% scale, and you can also drag this around to get whatever part of the print you're looking for. You don't want to scale to fit, otherwise obviously it wouldn't be the correct scale. So 100%, just simply click Print. So once you've printed your document or your print, essentially you're looking to understand the scale, in other words, if it's the correct size or not, and you're also looking for different light balances. So maybe it's a bit too dark, maybe it's a bit too light. You know, I can pull the brightness of my screen up and down. You won't see that, but on my screen it's going lighter and darker. So what is the actual brightness of this print? Well, essentially, so once you've printed it out, let's work on the image size for the time being. So let's say at the moment it's 60 centimeters. Let's go Image and then Size. So let's say you want it to be half the size of what it actually is at the moment. You'd simply just go 30 centimeters. And then when you obviously clicked OK, it will reduce it, the whole print, the full repeat, to 30 centimeters. Let's say you maybe wanted it to be about let's say 45 centimeters wide. You just simply put in 45. Maybe you wanted it larger, perhaps 100. It would make it far larger. So this is the way that we can change our image size and print it. So let's maybe make it 30 centimeters. We could then print it and look at the scale. Maybe it's something that we quite like, maybe it's not. Maybe we want it slightly larger, 45. We'd then print that document and have a look at the scaling once again. Okay, so that's just simply how you change the image size. I'm not actually going to do that because this tutorial will probably crash because my memory can't cope with the file size and also the screen recording. So we've looked at image sizing, but how about the colors? So for example, if you printed it out and it was maybe a little bit too dark, well, let's just go to Image, Adjustments, and you can change a whole load of different things in this little settings here: brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, hue, saturation, all these different ways. But let's just focus on light and dark. So let's go to Exposure, and you can simply just pull up the exposure of your print, okay, to make it far lighter or to make it far, far darker. Okay, so this is just a very, very easy way of controlling how light or dark your print is. Mine's actually printing out slightly darker than I wanted, so I'm just going to pull that exposure up and then print it once again. So you're just experimenting and testing. Let's just click Cancel. Okay, that's fine. Obviously your printer has different color settings to the digital printers that you're going to be sending it to, or the digital textile printers you're going to be sending it to. So it's also really important to maybe send them one file with a few different examples. And you could do this, let's say, let's just take this whole file here. Let's copy it. So select all and then edit and then copy. Let's create a new document. Create. And then let's paste that in. I'm just going to go to Image, Edit and then Free Transform. I'm not worrying about scale too much at this point. And I'm just going to scale it down. And this is purely for color correction, okay, not for scale. I'm just going to take that, that layer there. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste another one in. And maybe we can remove our dark background. And with this one, I'm going to go to, with that layer selected, so this one's selected, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Exposure, and then maybe take the exposure up a little bit. And maybe we do another one, just paste it in, and we can take the exposure up even more. In fact, let's take this one here, copy, and then paste it in. And then let's go Image, Adjustments, Exposure, and let's make it even brighter. Okay, so you could send these different variations or versions. You could even, let's say, change the hue and saturation. Maybe you want to see the colors, maybe have something slightly different. It's not particularly attractive, but so you could send this file, you could save this as a file and just send it to the print, let's say, the textile printers, and ask them to print this out on material. You could then choose from those samples, which one you prefer. Okay, so lots of different things to think about. Okay, so we've looked at image size and how we actually scale it, and we obviously, so let's just recap. So we print out our initial print, which is this one, on just A4. We then look at the scale of it. Maybe we want to reduce the size, increase the size. We print another example, just so we get that kind of scaling right. And then when it comes to colors, in terms of the light and dark, maybe it's coming out a little bit darker on your printer. You can then obviously change the exposure. And if you wanted to send a sample run to the digital textile printers, just simply paste your print in, reduce the size of it so it fits on a, let's say, 60 centimeter square, and then just change the exposures on each individual piece. Okay, so really simple. And obviously when you get the samples back, you will have a better idea of what that print's actually going to look like, because it's going to cost a lot of money to print this, so you don't want to get it wrong. Okay, let's just shut that down. There's also one other thing I want to talk about as well. Let's just get my brightness up. Is how you, let's say, print this out for a presentation. Let's say, for example, you have a client or a customer coming over and they want to see their print, but they want to see it full size in the full repeat. In other words, this in full glory. Well, what we do is if we go to Adobe Illustrator, hang on a minute, where are we? Let's just close that down for a second. Bear with me. Okay, let's open up Adobe Illustrator. Now I'm going to provide this template on the blog post page, and it's simply a textile print template, and there'll be a few different examples of this. Let's just make that slightly larger. Okay, so A4 textile print template, and I've created this. Is very similar to our A4 print templates for our patterns, but it's slightly smaller. It's still A4 pages, and you have this print title here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Photoshop, I'm going to go File, and then let's just save as on the desktop. And we can call this PL002, then we can have, what is it, Lily and Palm, sorry, I'm not on it today, neon print, and click Save. Let's go to Illustrator, and let's go File, Open. We can't copy and paste it through the desktops, through the two applications, because we won't have enough memory on our computer. Okay, so then let's go to PL00, where is it? 003, this one, and let's just open it up in Adobe Illustrator, and just click Flatten Layers to a single image, click OK. Okay, and now, because it's in the same platform, we can actually just copy this. So let's just select it, hit Control-C to copy, and then we're going to paste it onto our print template. And as you can see, there we go. So that is essentially the full-scale size of our print. And if you want to, let's just move this up. And because essentially we don't want to print all these pages out, we just want this little piece here and possibly this print title. And let's just go Edit. Where is it? Artboards. Okay, what I use shortcuts. So it's Control, Alt, or Command, Alt, and P will bring up your document setup. I believe document setup is in File. Yeah, document setup. And then here we go, Edit Artboards, and we can simply just click on this one, hit Delete, Backspace, 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 Backspace on your keyboard. Click here, Backspace, Backspace, click here, Backspace, Backspace. And so now, we can either save this as a multi-page PDF, or we can just simply print straight from Adobe Illustrator. And once again, do not scale. Copies 1, the range is 1 to 12, which is great. And then we just hit print, and it will print it out on multiple pages of A4, and you can then simply cut these out and stick them together to give you a let's say a full-scale repeat of your print, which you can then obviously display to your customers. And you probably saw this at the very, very beginning of this blog post where I showed you these big pages. We have both A4, A3, A2, A1, and also A0 templates in case you want to take them to digital printers and print them out on one big page. But if you're home printing, then this is really handy as well. Okay, and you can obviously even scale this up if you want to. So that's going to be 68 centimeters. You know, you could even make it 50. So you could also scale your print this way when it comes to printing. But yeah, it's up to you if you want to do that. Okay, next let's talk about the digital printers. So actually taking this and let's say sending it to a digital printer. So we're going to use Spoonflower for this. They're great because essentially they allow you to do short runs of prints. You can do anything from up to, I think, 50 centimeters to hundreds of meters. So it's great when it comes to one-off prints and not mass production. Now they have a variety of different let's say requirements when it comes to sending your print. So one of them is it has to either be JPEG, TIFF, PNG, and also GIF. Now I'm going to use JPEG for this because this document has a lot of different colors. whereas a PNG probably only has about 256 colors, whereas this has thousands. So generally use PNGs for, let's say, heavy graphic stuff like fonts, logos, where you don't have a huge amount of color and you want, let's say, graphic edges to be crisp, whereas this is going to be a JPEG or a TIFF. So very, very simple. I'm first, and also, sorry, one last thing, they also require the document to be 150 dpi. Now I believe, let's go to image size, ours is, the resolution is 360. So we would have to change this to 150 and then click OK, and that would reduce the size of this image. It won't reduce the dimensions of it, it'll just reduce the quality. Okay, so we're not reducing the size, we're reducing the quality of this print, which is great. And also the file has to be under 40 megabytes. At the moment, it was 210 megabytes, which is huge. Now it's 36.6 if we change the resolution. Okay, and this will change depending on what resolution you put in there. So 36.6 is just beautifully below the 40 megabyte maximum upload for Spoonflower. Okay, in a tutorial in the future we will actually show you the process of uploading this to Spoonflower and obviously getting that material printed, but that's obviously once we've chosen our print for Francesca's robe. But I just wanted to kind of cover those little points in this tutorial just very, very quickly. I'm not going to resize this because it'll crash my screen capture. I'm just going to click cancel. Okay, so that's just a little bit of information when it comes to, scaling, printing, correcting colors, and correcting light and dark when it comes to your prints. Okay, that's pretty much the end of this tutorial. Check out next time when we actually start to show Francesca these prints, and we'll then start to put them into our fashion illustrations to create a more beautiful presentation for her when it comes to her robe. Okay, thank you very much.